Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Cindy Huber. I'm with the National Kidney Foundation of Wisconsin. And to those of you who are joining us online, we apologize for the delay. We had just a few technical difficulties. For the people in the room, I think I've told all of you that tonight we're broadcasting live, and we're excited about offering that opportunity. But with that comes some challenges, so thank you for those of you online. We have a great volunteer, John, monitoring our questions from folks listening online. So Allison, whom I introduce in just a moment, will be able to answer those questions as well as those from you here in the room. If those of you in the room, if you can just speak up a little bit when you're saying your question, and Allison will be sure to kind of repeat it or summarize it at least. So online folks, if they didn't hear it, you'll be able to capture that. So we're very excited tonight. Allison is a good friend of the National Kidney Foundation of Wisconsin, and we're very excited to do these programs. And tonight's focus will definitely be on how people make decisions to become a living kidney donor. And the reason our organization feels very strongly about that is of the 2,300 people here in Wisconsin that are waiting for any kind of solid organ, 1,800 of those people are waiting for kidneys. And so in reality, someone that steps forward in becoming a living donor is not only changing the life of another individual and his or her family, but also helping another person on the waiting list, if you will, enhance and, if you will, kind of theoretically move up on the list. So becoming an altruistic donor is wonderful. We're also lucky tonight that here in the room we have 2 living donors. You'll hear, I think we can probably convince Michelle to also share a little bit about her experience, although her experience is different than our great speaker, Marty, that will share his experience, and he joins us tonight from the Kenosha, Wisconsin area. So thanks for making the journey up here because it's very important. Allison Stephans is a veteran in the transplant world, and she's a veteran speaker for us. So Allison, welcome.
Thank you, Cindy. My name is Allison. I am one of the social workers in the transplant clinic. So I work with both recipients and donors, and I will be sharing a little bit more about my role as we go on the presentation. And that is me for those of you who are online and don't get to see me in person. That's who I am. And so today what we're really going to be talking about is benefits of donation and why we prefer having living donors and what it's going to take to be a living donor. And so first of all, there's a lot of benefits to having a living donor from the recipient standpoint. Usually for the recipient, when you have a live donor kidney, it usually starts functioning sooner and quicker for the recipient. The other thing is it's a scheduled event. There's no last minute call in, frantic, everything is scheduled. You know exactly what's going to happen. So both from the donor and the recipient standpoint, everything's a little bit nice and calm as far as the routine goes. And that way you can also kind of choose a time that works for you. If you've got something that's really important going on in your life, you can schedule the surgery around you, because especially from a donor perspective, this is a completely voluntary surgery that you're going through. And so the team will definitely work with you when you have something going on and don't want to be recovering from surgery during a specific life event. And because it is scheduled, your recipient is also going to be in optimum health because they know what's going on. So the transplant team can do what they need to do to prepare the recipient to make sure they're ready to go on time for surgery. It also means less time on the waiting list, as Cindy had mentioned. And right now, center to center, region to region is different across the country. But right now in Wisconsin, the average wait time for a patient to get a deceased donor is 5 to 7 years. And that kind of changes and comes and goes. Long-term survival and results are best having a living donor versus a deceased donor. And there's also reduced risk of rejection because there's a better chance that you're going to get a really good match with all of the things that go into play in matching somebody. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well as the presentation goes on. And so there's a lot of ways that donation helps. And Cindy already alluded to this first bullet point, that it helps many people. Not only are you helping the person you're directly donating to, you're also helping the person who is getting the deceased donor that the person you're donating to would have gotten had you not donated. And also, we'll talk a little bit about paired exchange when you may not be a match for somebody you'd like to donate to. There's ways that they can find matches in pairs, and not even pairs, but chains. And so there have been chains where there have been 20, 30 or more people getting a transplant just based off of one altruistic donor. So it's a really neat thing to be a part of and to have how many people helped. And Cindy also alluded to the statistics of how many people need kidneys. So nationwide, there's over 100,000 people waiting for a kidney as we speak. And in Wisconsin, there's over 1,900 alone. So there's a lot of things to consider when you want to be a living donor. There's a couple ways that you can think of altruistic donors. A lot of times when we talk about altruistic donors in our clinic setting, it's somebody who is doing it because without having a directed recipient in mind, that they're just donating to anyone, a stranger, because they just feel they want to donate. But in this sense, I'm also meaning just altruistic in the sense that you just have that want and urge to help somebody else, that there's no coercion, there's no pressure, that you are donating your kidney because it is just truly something that you want to do to help somebody else. So you have to have at least 2 kidneys to donate. Yeah, you have to be at least 18 years old. If you are directly donating to somebody, to donate to them, you do have to have some blood group compatibility, but there are also ways to donate to someone directly if you're incompatible through the paired exchange program. You do not have to be related. Which I think is a big myth, that some people think you have to be a direct blood relation to whoever you're donating to. You have to be in really good health, good physically fit. We'll talk a little bit more about that. If there's any concerns, you call a living donor team and ask them what that means. Financial preparedness is also important. We're going to talk a little bit more about that because you do have some recovery to go through, and we want to make sure you are able to pay all of your bills when you're not able to work. And a good support system is also very important during that recovery process because you do go home with some restrictions while your body heals, and you will need some help around the house and running errands for a while. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So there are a few things that will automatically exclude people from being donors, and here is kind of a list. It is not exclusive, but some of the bigger ones. And things like the high blood pressure or obesity, there could be a lot of questions about, well, how high is high blood pressure, or how overweight I need to be considered obese. And every center can have different rules and regulations of what that means to them. So, and I am not a nurse, I am a social worker, so I cannot answer those questions directly. But that is when you would call and talk to the donor team. They'll give you information. There is a nurse coordinator who usually takes those phone calls, gets some information, and let you know if they'll move forward. There are a lot of people who call and will be excluded at that very first phone call because they meet some of these exclusions. Also, when it comes to substance abuse or mental health issues, it's also not that, if you have a history of it, we're not necessarily going to exclude you, but we also want to make sure that you are in a position to be able to take good care of yourself after surgery, and that you have the coping skills to be able to manage anything that may not go as planned. And so for your own benefit, we want to make sure that you are able to take care of yourself, not just physically, but emotionally as well. And so there's a process that you go through. It starts with that phone call that you would call and let the team know that you are interested in being a donor. There's a little screening over the phone. As I said, there's a questionnaire that we have you fill out. They ask your blood type if you know it. If not, they will do it when you find out when you get your medical testing done. You typically come in, and it is a very long, full day because they try to get all the medical testing done in one day so you're not back and forth to the hospital. You also see a multidisciplinary team during that day where you see a variety of people to get to know you, give you education about what to expect with the donation process, and get more information from you to ensure you are a good candidate. After all of the testing is done, after you've met everybody on the team, then the committee comes together and makes a decision of whether or not you would be an appropriate donor. And then the team would let you know what their decision is, or sometimes there's more medical testing that they need to do to help make their decision, and they will let you know that. If you get approved, then they start moving forward and trying to schedule a time for you to donate. And so this is the multidisciplinary team on who you would be meeting that day of your consultation. So you're going to meet with a nephrologist. For those of you who may not know, that is a kidney specialist. And so they will review your health history, discuss the risks of donation, and they go into pretty significant detail with your health history. The nurse coordinator coordinates the entire evaluation process, the donation process. They're kind of your go-to person. Whenever you have any phone questions, you call them and they can direct you and get you the answers you need. You would also see the dietitian, weight loss, or your weight, any diet that you have, provide education to maintain your health and maintain a healthy kidney after donation. The pharmacist just reviews your medications, if there's anything that you might be on or that could impact surgery, what you should and should not take, and she reviews that with you. As a social worker, I would review the psychosocial risks. I go through everything from support and finances, mental health, drug and alcohol use, legal issues, why you'd like to donate, and also provide you with all the education and the resources you need to make a healthy decision from a psychological perspective, and the finances to let you know if you would like to be a donor, all of that, what that entails. And then you also meet with an independent living donor advocate. Their role is really just to make sure that the team has informed you of everything that you need to know to make a well-informed decision of whether or not you'd like to donate, and make sure you're doing this because this is something you truly, genuinely want to do, and that there's no pressure or coercion from anybody on the team or anybody in the community. that might be pressuring you. So myths about donation, I think we already talked about that top one. Relationship is not important. There are people who donate to complete strangers. And so there are methods when the blood types don't match on how to make that happen. And the paired exchange program is a big one, and there are other ones. And that's really for, I can't answer those questions. The medical team can kind of give you the details of what that would be if you have somebody you would like to donate to. Donors need to change their lifestyle after donation. Also another myth, our goal is to have you have the exact same lifestyle prior to donation. You should be able to maintain a healthy lifestyle. You should be able to do sports, exercise, do all those activities that you enjoy. I'll tell you, the team may kind of warn somebody who, if there's a lot of like extreme sports or high impact activities that they like to do, just a warning, just because since you only have one kidney after donation, if your one kidney gets injured, you're gonna end up maybe needing dialysis and a transplant of your own. So they just want you to be able to protect the kidney that you have. Surgery includes a complicated recovery. Hospital stay is pretty short. It's typically 2 to 3 days on average. There are definitely times where it's more, because obviously we want to make sure that you're ready to go home and everything's working properly. There are some temporary restrictions during recovery. I will tell you though, it's not a super complicated recovery, but depending on the type of work you do need to expect on average 4 to 8 weeks off of work. So even though the surgery itself, the recovery from a physical standpoint is pretty minimal, they are taking an organ out of your body, so you do have to let your body heal. And taking it easy and getting help is definitely part of that plan. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the financial aspect, because I think that seems to be my biggest issue, especially with people who are working. You have to be able to pay all those expenses. And as far as the big expenses go from the medical piece, it's very minimal to you. Your recipient's insurance covers the evaluation, the surgery, the recovery. And even if you are donating altruistically and you don't have an intended recipient, there's a way that they kind of hold on to that. You will never see a bill. And if you do, you need to let us know, because somebody made a mistake. But donors should never receive a bill for their process. And so that does happen with the recovery process as well. I will tell you, if there are complications further down the road, there is a potential that your insurance may need to cover it, just because the further from surgery you are, the harder it is to prove that it was directly related to that surgery. So at some point, your insurance would likely be liable. So we always encourage our donors to have insurance. And so if you are uninsured or need help, I did post some information of where to go to get health insurance, or you can always talk with a transplant social worker or financial counselor to be able to get more details on how to get insurance. So there's also other ways to get some help while you're recovering and not able to work. So some states have a donor leave law to provide time off for donors. In Wisconsin, we don't have anything for general donors. If you work for the state does have paid time leave for donors. If it's not, it's pretty much up to your employer. There's also tax deduction programs that are in some states. This is something that Wisconsin has. So you can deduct up to $10,000 of your own personal expenses as a donor in Wisconsin. Most of those expenses are related to travel, lodging, and unpaid time off of work, because of all the big stuff is as I said, covered under your recipient's insurance. So if you live locally and you're donating locally, those expenses are pretty minimal, but especially for people who are donating to a loved one, some people are willing to travel halfway across the country to give their loved one a kidney. So those travel and lodging expenses do definitely add up. When it comes to short-term disability and paid time off, it really is determined employer to employer of what they offer, what they allow. So that's something that you need to work out with your employer if you choose to donate. Some people are very upfront and honest with their employers right away. When I meet them, they're like, oh, yep, I've already talked to my employer and this, and they know everything. Other people want to wait until they get approved to talk to their employer. There's no right or wrong way. It's really what you feel comfortable with. And this bottom bullet is really just a little bit of the law. Recipients are able to pay for the expenses of travel, housing, and lost wages to help their donor out. They're not allowed to provide any more compensation other than those expenses. There are also other organizations that can help with those expenses if it is too much for the donors. These organizations feel very strongly that they don't want the financial impact of donation to be the only reason they're not donating. So the National Living Donor Assistance Center will help out with travel and lodging. They do not help with the unpaid time off of work, where the American Transplant Foundation will assist a little bit with some unpaid time off of work. They don't write you a check, but they will help pay for some of those expenses, you know, pay your utilities or your mortgage or rent or something while you're unable to work. There are also fundraising organizations available that all they do is help people fundraise for transplant and donation. And so I've listed a couple of those organizations as well to kind of help raise funds if that's something that's needed. You know, I already talked about why donors should have their own health insurance. You know, again, as those of you who have donated in the room know, you go through more of a medical workup than any healthy person will ever go through. And so there's always that risk that we could find something during that process that you didn't know about yourself. And if that happens and follow-up is needed, you're going to be responsible for any of that follow-up. So that's why insurance is important before you donate. After donation, we want to make sure people are going to their doctor every year getting lab work done. So if there is a sign of their kidney not working quite right, it's treated right away before it becomes a chronic issue. Another thing that donors can consider is getting a short-term or long-term disability policy prior to donation, and life insurance as well. Life insurance can be challenging for donors to get after donation, just because life insurance companies see you having one kidney as a liability to them. So it may not actually, they may deny you, or they just might charge you a higher premium. So we always encourage people to get life insurance in place prior to donation. All right, any questions about anything that I've talked about so far? All right. Oh.
I have a quick question, Allison. On the slide, you said that in the evaluation stage, the donors would meet with you. Are they also meeting with the psychologist or somebody in addition to you from a social work perspective?
So not everybody meets with a psychologist. We do have a psychologist on staff to meet with all of our donors. If donors would like to speak with a psychologist, that's something that we can make happen. But sometimes they meet with the people on that list first, and if there's any other glaring psychological concerns, then we can add that at that time. Sometimes during a chart review prior to them coming in, and if there's a history we'll just schedule it right away. So it's kind of on an individual basis. All right, any other questions? All right, well then I'm gonna bring up the real experts. So that way you can hear from a live donor. So this is Marty, and he donated just a couple months ago. And so I'm gonna just let you introduce yourself and share your story and let them know why you chose to donate, who you donated to, and then let them ask any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marty. Start off by about 4 years ago, a friend of our family received a kidney from a living donor, and he was on dialysis at the time. And afterwards, his health improved dramatically. He now runs marathons and triathlons, and he's very healthy. So that put the idea in my head about 4 years ago that that might be a possibility of me donating somewhere in the future. And then about a year ago now, one of our teachers at the school I work at created a Facebook page named Corey Needs a Kidney. And they put out there all Corey's information. He was O positive, and I know I'm O positive. So I thought maybe, might be a possibility of donating to Corey. So I talked it over with my wife for a few weeks, and we talked about the health risks and about our family history, that we didn't really have any kidney issues in our family going way back. So then I called up the transplant team here at Froedtert and got the paperwork, the long paperwork. It's a few pages long. They ask you everything, and then sent that in. And then a couple weeks later, they called and did the interview. I think 2 interviews. It's been a year, so I can't really remember, but the 2 phone interviews, and that went well. And then I had to wait 6 months because Corey had to wait for a melanoma he had on his back to that time had to pass before they would let him go on the transplant list. So we had to wait till October before I could do the 12-hour testing day, which turned out to be 11. They had this, the EKG or the echocardiogram wasn't available that day, so they had to come back for that. But that's a long day at 6 a.m. and you get a lot of blood draws and urinalysis and CT scans and a lot of testing. And so that went well. And then a couple weeks later, I had to come back. During that process, they asked me to lose 10 pounds. I was 249 pounds at the time. And they said, a month from now, we want you to lose 10 pounds. So I ended up losing 16 pounds. And they said, if you keep losing it, it'll be better for your recovery. So I just kept losing weight. So, and then about the week of Thanksgiving is when I took the DNA and the antigen test, blood draw test. That was the last one to make sure we were a match. They do that last here at Froedtert. And so then the week after Thanksgiving is when we found out. They called me and let me know, and they asked me if I wanted to tell the Canfields that I was a donor or I was a match, and I said no. I want you guys to call them. I didn't think it was right or appropriate for me to call my coworker and tell her that I'm a match for their husband. So I figured it'd be better coming from a professional. So so they tried to call them that night and they weren't available. So they had to wait till the next day. So she found out at school, and so then that all happened. They Corey called her Kristen at school and told her, and I got called her room, and we kind of, hugged, and, a lot of emotions that day. So, so then I didn't know Corey at the time. I only knew Kristen. I worked with Kristen at the school I work at. So then we began to become friends with Corey and their 2 children, and that was another reason why I wanted to donate, was because they got 2 small children too, just like we do, actually smaller than ours. So that was one of the main reasons that I wanted to donate. And then we picked a date right after Christmas. So December 27th, 2017. The surgery went well for both of us. I had a 4-day hospital stay. So we came home on New Year's Eve. So it all went well. I had a 8-week recovery time because I'm a head custodian at a middle school, so I lift a lot during the day. So the doctor wanted me to take eight weeks off. So I was off until the middle of February or so, and I got to know Corey during that time because we were both off. So we would go out and do things together and hang out, and so that was pretty neat. So, and that's about it. Went back to work, feel good, feel just like I did before the surgery. So really no issues. So it's it's a good thing. So yeah, that's about it. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Corey right now?
Marty.
Marty, sorry. Just heard you saying Corey. Nothing. I'm like,
You could tell us more about your decision to donate, being the father of 2 children. I'm a living kidney donor myself and a parent, and I just had a lot of people question my decision being a parent of young children as well. So what is your thoughts behind that? Did people question you, or? No,
not really. No. When my wife and I talked about it, we have a lot of family, and we thought if something was to happen to them, we would have a support system that would help us out. So that, I think, helped us make our decision to donate. So, and I've left my wife out of the recovery time. Recovering over winter time wasn't the greatest. Plus it snowed a couple times. The boys helped out shoveling, which was awesome because I couldn't shovel at all. So, but she did everything during those 2 months. So that was awesome. Thanks. Anything else?
I'm just curious what you'd say to somebody that maybe, is thinking about it, or maybe they've seen a story on TV, or, because you kind of had a little bit of a personal experience, but
yeah.
What would you kind of say to somebody that maybe just something in them says that they want to give to others?
I think first of all, you're saving somebody. You're improving their life dramatically from if dialysis, but he was close to dialysis, and from what I learned, it's not the best thing to do. Go through it doesn't. Your body doesn't take well to it, and you're just saving someone's life. It's just I don't know. That's what I would tell somebody. I mean, what can be better than that?
I have a question for you. Is there anything in your experience going through the whole donation process before and after surgery that it caught you by surprise, and you'd say, something that people who are considering donation need to know?
Surgery, after the
Yeah, anything in that whole process, anything that's like out of anything, this is what they need to know when they make this decision.
Lose as much weight as you can, because the less weight, they go through your stomach muscles, so you can't sit up for the longest time. So the less you have to move around, it's the better for you. Pack light for the hospital. Don't pack too much. One, you're going to be so tired that you're not going to want to. I didn't want to read at all. I just wanted to sleep most of the time. And you're not wearing clothes while you're in the hospital, so there's no reason to pack any clothes. So I would sweatpants, t-shirt, and sandals, and that's it. So if I had to do it again, so. Yeah, it was really. Yeah, I didn't do anything on my recovery. I wanted to make sure I didn't get a hernia. That was the one thing they warned you about. The surgeons warned you about all the time is the hernia thing, and so I didn't do anything during those 8 weeks just to prevent that, because I know my job. I was going to do a lot of lifting when I went back, and I didn't want to. I want to prevent that, so I really took it easy during recovery. So, and the one pain I had in the hospital, other pain, when they go inside you, they put gas inside you. They get in there, and it goes to the high point of the shoulder, and I don't know what it feels. It's just a sharp pain, and it just kind of annoys you while you're in the hospital for those 4 or 5 days, and then it kind of goes away. After you're walking around more, it kind of works its way out, but it was just an annoying pain that you didn't expect. So, and I had a hard time wearing belts for a while because the buckle would dig into the incision and the stomach muscle scar tissue. So now I can, but so it was sweatpants for pretty much 8 weeks. So.
Marty, I have another question. So when Allison talked about limiting extreme sports or extreme activities, one of the decisions I made before donating was to go skydiving, because I was like, I'm not going to be able to do it post donation. Did you do anything prior to anything on the bucket list?
No, I did. Yeah, I didn't really do anything crazy before. Yeah, nothing too great. I got those two I don't wrestle with. I didn't wrestle with her. But yeah, let them win. So no, I didn't do anything crazy ahead of time. I skydived back in my 20s, so I didn't have to worry about it. So, but yeah, nothing too crazy.
I don't think I've ever asked this before, but I'm kind of curious. But when you said something, Michelle, and then when you said something, what about, Allison, when individuals that are considering donation, but they do have family members, like, do you bring when there are children? Do you expect Marty and his wife, or Michelle, you and your husband, to kind of translate what's going to happen with dad or with mom? Or do you do anything when there are obviously great young people involved in the family and mom or dad is considering donation? I just have never really asked that question before, but seeing how helpful and awesome these young men were when you guys arrived made me think, like, is there stuff, or what do you do, or is there something that we need to develop and have?
That's actually a great question. I talk about it a little during my evaluation process when we're talking about the recovery. Depending on the age of the children, we'll either talk about how they can help with the chores, or if they're really little, on who's going to be taking care of them when you're laid up and can't help, especially with babies. You can't lift your baby for 6 weeks, and that's something, especially, for new parents, if you've got someone, a baby under one and you can't hold them, that's got to be a hard decision. At least it would be for me. And so those are all things that we talk about, especially for some school-aged children. The one thing that I do offer parents is we have a donor from several years ago who wrote a book about her donation, and it's a children's book. And so I will hand that to parents when they come in for their evaluation process so that they can read it to their children, and that kind of helps them kind of explain what to expect in that book. So that is what I do to kind of help get the kids involved and have them have an understanding of what to expect, because most of the time the kids are not there when I'm meeting the potential donor. So, but that's a good question.
Well, if I could share my experience, it was amazing. My daughters were 7 and 9 at the time of donation, and probably right around the same age. And I asked my transplant coordinator if I could bring them in to Froedtert to have a tour of the facility. They got to meet my nephrologist. They got to meet my transplant surgeon. They walked them through where I would be during surgery, and obviously not in the surgical area, but in that same space, in the recovery area where my room would be. They did such a fabulous job of preparing my kids and answering those questions that I had. And I also have a husband. He loves when I say these things that are being recorded. He gets a little queasy at times. So I was more worried about Bob passing out and having issues than I was about myself. So it was really important that he felt comfortable and confident where I was going to be in the hospital and where he was going to need to be in the hospital at all times. I was unbelievably impressed by request, the care that the Froedtert team provided to my kids to make them feel safe as mom was undergoing a pretty important surgery.
So another thing I forgot to, another resource we have is at Froedtert is a child life program that does a lot of those things that you just talked about, and to help the kids feel comfortable with going and visiting mom or dad in the hospital and what to expect, and some activities to provide. So that can also be an additional resource for families.
Allison alluded to the fact that, after surgery, you can go back to your normal life activities, minus skydiving or bungee jumping, obviously. But how has your life changed, for better or worse? And I doubt there's any worse, but how has your life changed since becoming a living donor?
A few interviews, more than I had before. But it's physically hasn't changed, but just knowing that I've donated to somebody who is now feeling 100% better is an awesome feeling. He's able to play with his kids more, as long as they don't jump on him still, but it's just good to see him up and around, healthy and back to work, and it's just a great feeling to know that he's feeling a lot better than he did before. So I wanted to add something about the testing day. Each person you see along the way, the dietitian, all those people on that list that she put down, each one would ask, he still has other options. He can go on dialysis or go on the deceased donor list. You don't have to do this. Every person along the way told me that. So to make sure that I was making the decision for the right reasons. So, but.
Any other questions?
Oh.
Thank you.
No. There was one question that was on the top of my head. Now I lost it. Oh, no, it was back to when you were talking about your recovery. And, it was refreshing as a social worker to hear you say that you actually took it easy for those 8 weeks. Because there are times when I am talking to people and encouraging them to take that time off of work and the importance of taking that time off of work, where people will tell me, well, I've got a laptop. I can work while I'm in the hospital. I can work from home and in bed. I can do this and that. I'll be back to work in 2 weeks. From someone who's actually gone through the surgery, what would your advice be to them?
See, my job doesn't require a laptop, so I did respond to like text and stuff for different situations that happened at the school, but for the most part, I let my sub do what he had to do, and I didn't worry about it so much. And the principal would not tell me things, so I wouldn't worry about stuff at the school. So. But I just had to get it in my head that I just got to take it easy and not push it, and just so I can recover. And not the hernia thing was always in my head that, if I push this, I'm going to go back to work and I won't have any sick days left. Yeah. But yeah, I won't have enough to do hernia surgery and be out for 4 weeks, whatever it is for hernia. But just take it easy and just catch up on Netflix and any other movies you want to catch up on, because that's what you're doing most of the time. So.
Marty, how much water are you drinking?
Oh, a lot. Yeah. Probably a half gallon to a gallon, depending on the day. So back to work, it's a little bit more just because I'm moving around more than normal. So, but it's going good. Yeah. Corey got me one of those gas station coffee mugs, those huge half-gallon things. And so I keep that at work. So at my desk. So every time I come back, I make sure I'm drinking every time. And just that huge thing reminds me to drink water every time I get back to my desk. So.
How often do you have to go back for just checking in at your transplant center? I might have missed that when you shared your story. And how long are you going to have to kind of stay connected to this transplant center relative to your donation?
Well, it's a 2-week review or doctor's appointment after. And they just kind of check me out. They really didn't do very much. I do the blood test and urine test and all that to make sure my levels are okay. But after that, they just want me to see my doctor every year and make sure I get the right blood tests and urine tests to make sure everything's working right. That's about it.
Allison, I thought,
do I
come back?
Yes, you
Okay.
do.
I was just going to call you.
Yeah.
No, I think you have a 6-month follow-up as well. And we follow you for 2 years.
Okay.
So,
That part.
so yeah. And out of the grand scheme of things, you kind of take one day at a time. You go through so much during that evaluation process. It's impossible to remember everything we tell you. So
Even after the hospital stay, I just don't. The hospital stay, I don't remember much from the hospital stay. It was a lot of napping, a lot of sleeping, a lot of blood draws, and I guess I need to get a hold of my coordinator.
she will contact you, I promise.
Sure, yeah. So.
All right. Any other questions or? No, we've got a little bit of time left. Did you want?
I don't know if there are there any other, if there's not any other questions. Michelle, was there anything else you wanted to add from your experience or?
I'll just say one quick thing. I always talk quick, right? Well, it's always nice to meet a fellow kidney donor. Hello. And Marty and I are both on a Facebook group together called Living Donors of Wisconsin. Living Donors Together of Wisconsin. And I'm stealing a slide. I know that's coming later, but it is always great to have the opportunity to meet folks because we make this decision and put our faith and our trust in the healthcare system and in our care team to be doing the research and to be on top of their field. And it's always so refreshing to meet folks who have had a positive experience. And I donated my kidney to the father of my best friend from high school in August of 2014. And it seems like yesterday. And with that, I'm feeling great. I'm happy. I'm healthy 3 years post donation. But most importantly, like you said, the recipient is happy and healthy. And I always text him when I'm at programs like this. And he said to let everybody know that I was on my way to a Bon Jovi concert when I made the decision to fill out the paperwork. And so he thinks I was in the right state of mind. And that my kidney travels the world because he is a consultant in the aviation industry. And I truly call my kidney like a flat Stanley because everywhere he goes, he takes a picture and sends it to me. So I was just recently in Hong Kong. So he had to cancel his Taiwan trip and he's now back in Florida. But he just wanted to let everybody know that he's so thankful for the team and for Living Donors because he gets to enjoy life with his family. And my kidney gets to travel the world. So that I'm going to let you guys talk about the fabulous, we call it a little social support group that has started because one of the things that I felt was there was a void and it was so great to connect with National Kidney Foundation to fill that void for me was there isn't a formal group that gathers for living kidney donors in the state of Wisconsin. There's support groups for recipients, for caregivers, but not necessarily something formal for the living donors. And so through the National Kidney Foundation, we found a home and a place where all of us that are interested in connecting, we can gather. And so we thank you guys for organizing this for us because it truly gives us an opportunity to build a network and a community and help create awareness for living organ donation. And the other piece through Froedtert is I am their first living organ donor mentor through their peer-to-peer mentor program. So for donors and recipients that are interested in continuing to mentor, that's a great way to stay connected. Because in addition to, or Allison mentioned, the living donor advocate that will call you in the evaluation process, you can also ask to speak to other living donors. And then if the interested donor matches essentially like a criteria like me, I'm now a 42-year-old woman, but a working mom, same age, giving to a non-relative, if some of those criteria match, then Froedtert will give me a call and ask me to reach out and connect with those interested donors just to share my story. So it's a great opportunity for me to give back in that way as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just add to Michelle. So there are 3 adult transplant centers in the state of Wisconsin. And so there are mentor programs that I'm aware of 2 of the transplant centers, but each of the transplant centers through the social worker would be happy, or the living donor advocate, to connect to mentors, or as Michelle says, to someone that might be from a similar circumstance. So a guy connecting to a guy, or a working guy with a family, that kind of thing, etc. So that's another thing to always ask the transplant centers. So because the National Kidney Foundation works with all of the transplant centers in Wisconsin, I think our Living Donors Together group offers an opportunity to not only hear from other experts from Froedtert. So for instance, next week's program that we're offering, we will have one of the other social workers from Froedtert be talking about the stresses on the family of kidney individuals that are having to wait, if you will, kidney patients, and some of those stresses to just deeper understanding of that. And then we have Kathy Schultz, who is with the University of Wisconsin-Madison Public Affairs, but also the Donate Life Wisconsin marketing chair, and just talking about how to tell your story, because telling your story isn't necessarily standing in front of a group. It could just be one-on-one, and you're at book club and you just are talking. In church, many times individuals are from the pulpit, or in the announcement they might you might see something about a congregant. And so I think Kathy has an awesome presentation that I'm hoping anyone, and you don't have to be a living donor to listen to those, so anyone that feels they would like to just be an advocate. So I'm kind of looking at some of the folks in the room who see the other side of transplant. So I would recommend, all of the programs are free and they're all online, so you can listen in, ask questions, and we have living donors from all over the state. In April, we'll be doing an entire program on more of the clinical aspects of living kidney donation. And we'll be having the team of Froedtert, of Aurora will actually be doing that presentation. And do you have that date handy? Either Michelle or back here in the room, because I see people wanting. April 18th. And so again, that's totally online, but you can listen because the transplant centers, while they're all unique and have their own personalities, all of them do I think have some basic premises and procedures and practices that are pretty uniform as it relates to the process. And so the team at Aurora will be offering a clinical perspective on, so really, like, you want to know what's involved in that surgery. I mean, I think you heard Marty and Allison describe it a bit tonight, but you'll get to roll up your sleeves and really hear more of the clinical aspects of that, because I think both Michelle and Marty and Allison highlighted tonight, there's a lot of information and you really just have to kind of take every opportunity. I don't know if you would agree, but I think it just helps because there is a lot of things that come up. I think even tonight it occurred to me I'd never asked the question about kids or grandkids, and how do you explain mom or dad or grandma, grandpa, or auntie, how do you kind of explain that thing? Because what an amazing lesson too of generosity and kindness you're demonstrating to the next generation just by your action. So I would say that's something that I don't think people realize is also a residual effect in terms of seeing the kindness of another and how that will carry through. Then living donors are getting together at both the Derby Dash 5th, which is in the Milwaukee area, and then a big gathering in Madison where on July 28th, that's called the Capital City Run and Walk for Organ Tissue and Eye Donation. And that event has about 1,200 people from 10 states. So recipients, donor families, living donors. And thanks to the efforts of Michelle and another living donor, Jill Dillon, who hails from the Marshfield, Wisconsin Rapids, Nakusa area. We're having a big get together with living donors, and then everyone's participating in the run and walk, but we'll have a chance. So you'll get to meet people from all over the Midwest who have made the choice. So I would encourage you to come out and be a part of those events and connect. Hear other people's stories. But Allison, we want to thank you for once again stepping up and volunteering. So I think it also speaks to the commitment of, in this case, the team at Froedtert, but we get to work with awesome professionals at Aurora, UW Health. Everyone volunteers when they're present for the National Kidney Foundation of Wisconsin, and they get our undying gratitude. And the knowledge that they're creating and helping to create tonight, hopefully a ripple in someone else's life. So thank you to those of you that came in the room, came and attended here in the room, and thanks to people online. And we look forward to seeing you at other events. Thank you.
Can we get a few pictures? Yeah, I did.